Michael Eruzione, Winthrop, Massachusetts.
Who do you play for?
I play for the United States of America. Very nice.
And then I turn around and walk out, and you were all done.
Yep. That's all he was waiting for all along. Y'all should have just...
It's a miracle he was able to read his mind.
Figure out that that's what he wanted.
Yeah.
Welcome to Your Pick, a film podcast. I'm Tatum.
And I'm Geneva.
We are two friends who love movies and love sharing them with each other. Each week, we take turns picking a film that is close to our hearts and talk about why it moves us, to tears, to laughter, and everything in between. We celebrate the craft of filmmaking, as well as the unique and personal ways we find meaning in the movies we watch. Good morning. Well, actually, no, it's not morning. It's afternoon. I legitimately thought it was morning. So
you turned to me with this big smile on your face and you went, "Good morning."
Good morning.
Confidently.
So context for the listener, we are recording on a Saturday, and I meant to watch the movie yesterday.
Saturday afternoon.
Yes.
To be clear.
A Saturday afternoon. I meant to watch the movie last night. Life things happened, and I didn't end up getting home till really late. So I had to wake up this morning and immediately turn on this movie. I forgot how long it was. Blah, blah, blah. And here we are in the afternoon, and I still thought it was the morning. So hello, Geneva.
Hello, Tatum.
So can you go ahead and kick us off by filling us in on anything you've been watching recently?
Yeah,
if
sure
anything.
Thing. Just two things to report. First, I watched a miniseries called Wives and Daughters from 1999. Which is one, like a BBC miniseries of an Elizabeth Gaskell novel that I had never seen before, which is kind of surprising because it's the type of thing that I grew up watching a lot with my mom. But for some reason, I'd never gotten around to this one. And I really, really liked it. I thought it was very well written, very well acted. It stars Justine Waddell, who's one of those actresses who was in a million BBC period dramas back in the day. And I don't know what she's doing now, but she was great. It also has Keely Hawes, who I absolutely adore. I think she's a brilliant actress, and she mostly does British TV, but everything I've seen her in, she's always been brilliant. And anyway, yeah, I just think it was a really good, I've never read the original novel, but I think as a work of adaptation, the finished product is very good. It's very women focused, which is great, as you would expect by the title. But there's a lot of complexity to the characters, characters that I think, having been written by another author, especially Victorian author, may have been sort of instantly dismissed. Instead, there's a lot of sympathy for their situation and for the choices they've made in the past, which I really like. So yeah, I definitely recommend Wives and Daughters if you enjoy a Victorian era British BBC miniseries. The other thing that I watched was a movie called Major Barbara, which viewers will remember if you've listened to our Pygmalion episode. Wendy Hiller, the star of Pygmalion, was a few years later in a movie called Major Barbara, which is also adapted from a play by George Bernard Shaw. The producer of Pygmalion is now the director of Major Barbara, and several of the cast members are also the same. Unfortunately, I don't think this is nearly as good as Pygmalion. I have never read the original play, and my understanding is that they had to make some changes for the context, because this was made 1941. This is during the war. A big plot point is that Major Barbara's father is like an arms manufacturer, and so I think some of the plot or the satire around that had to be altered. But I just think it's kind of muddled. It has some really good scenes and some good interactions, but I think it's kind of difficult to figure out exactly what it's saying, and maybe that's just me needing to sit on it longer and analyze it, but I just don't think it's very well done. It's definitely not directed as dynamically as Pygmalion is, and I think the acting even though it has a lot of really good actors, I think that their performances are just not as strong. It's not quite as funny. It's not quite as sharp. So I was a little disappointed by it, but still interesting for the era. And I adore Wendy Hiller, and she is wonderful in this. So worth watching just for her. But yeah, it did not quite live up to the hopes that I had for it.
Oh, well, that's a bummer. But I feel like Pygmalion's such a good movie that, I mean, it would take a lot to live up to those standards.
Yeah, it's true.
Yeah. Cool. Anything else?
Nope, that's it.
All right. Well, I mentioned last week that I was watching a docu-series on whales from National Geographic. I finished that.
Such a pure and wholesome thing that makes me so happy.
Yeah, I finished that this week. I thought there were going to be more episodes, but there were only 4 of them. I hope that they follow up and do another series because there's a lot more whales in the world than just 4, and I want to hear about the other ones.
Give me all the whale content.
Seriously, give me all of the whale content. So yeah, that was just a pleasant show to finish. I watched it with my mom and we just enjoyed it. And then I watched another show that I actually had never heard of, but my mom recommended it to me. She told me, she said, Tatum, I think you might like it. It's kind of filmed in a similar style to The Office and Parks and Rec. So I was like, okay, I'll try it out. And the show is called Jury Duty. Have you heard of it, Geneva?
Yes, I've been really curious about it. I've heard great things. I've not seen it yet.
I don't know why I'd never heard of it. It's really funny. It's really good. And it's also very short. Me and my mom literally watched all of it in one sitting. I don't really know what that says about us, but
how many? Because I'm assuming it's half-hour episodes.
They're all like 25 minutes, and there's 10 of them. So yeah, we watch it all in one sitting. Judge us if you want. But it's a really funny show. The concept of the show, for people who don't know, is the show basically is like following the journey of a bunch of jurors on a case from day one of them being assigned to the case until the last day when they basically decide whether or not the the person is not guilty. They've made it very clear. It's not guilty versus not guilty. It's liable versus not liable. So it goes up until that last point. But the secret is that all of the people in the entire production, the judge, the jury, the bailiff, everybody, they are all actors except for one jury member, which is a normal person who has no idea that the rest of people are actors and that none of this is real at all. So it's a really enjoyable watch. We had a lot of fun. I look forward. I hope they do more seasons, but I don't know how much they'll be able to do that because if the show becomes more and more popular, I don't know how likely it'll be for them to find people that don't know what this concept is. But yeah, it was a good time. So I would highly recommend Jury Duty. I watched it on Amazon Prime. And yeah, it's a super easy, pleasant watch. And it's very funny. So yeah.
From the one thing that I've really heard about that show is that they had enormous luck or enormous talent from the casting company in finding the one sort of normal non-actor who doesn't know what's going on, just because he is such a genuinely sweet and engaging person to watch.
Yep. Yeah. Me and my mom the whole time. I mean, my mom had already seen it, but we were just like, this is a very special type of person because it very easily could have gone a way of just, if they'd chosen a particular person, it could have felt disrespectful to them of like, oh, look at this, idiot who's just believing all of these things. And wow, he's so dumb. Like it could have gone really disrespectful towards the person that they chose. Or it could have gone the opposite way where the person was like, there's no way this is real. And it would have been all over. And this guy who they ended up with was really this great in between of, he's a really smart, genuinely kind human being who like saw the cracks in the facade. Like he literally at one point in the show was like, this is like reality TV. What's going on? So like he identified that something was weird, but because everyone else was so dedicated, he was like, well, we're still here and this is still going, so it can't be not real because it's been weeks of this. But yeah, so he was this really nice in between of being a really smart person who's really kind, but also like not very aware of pop culture. Because I was telling my mom, I was watching the show and I was like, there's quite a few people on this jury that I know them from other things. So this guy must be like living under a rock somewhere because he doesn't know who these people are. But maybe that says more about me. Maybe other people wouldn't know who they are either. But yeah,
right,
anyway.
because it's James Marsden is kind of the most famous person, but that it's like acknowledged within the show that James Marsden, the actor,
but he didn't even know who James Marsden was. Like the first episode, he was like, I don't know who you are. So he really like just doesn't know people. But anyway, yeah, it's a great show. I would highly recommend Jury Duty. It's a pleasant, easy watch. So yeah. Anyway, so all of that being said, let's move on to our discussion of the movie Miracle. For people who have listened to this podcast before, I think it's been pretty well established that Geneva sports movies are not for her. Sports movies are very much so for me. So, I guess I can get into this later. I'm already jumping into things. So let me start with my research first and then we can go from
sounds
there.
Good.
Blah, 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 blah. So today on the show, we are discussing the 2004 docudrama Miracle, directed by Gavin O'Connor. The film stars Kurt Russell, Noah Emmerich, and a million other people. The movie tells the miraculous true story of USA head coach Herb Brooks and the underdog USA hockey team that he led to win the gold medal against the Soviet Union in the 1980 Olympics. Made on a $28 million budget and released during a time when Americans were experiencing a strong sense of patriotism, the film was a financial success. It grossed a total of almost $65 million during its theatrical run. When prepping for the film, O'Connor knew that he wanted Kurt Russell to play the role of Herb due to his experience with and passion for athletics. Being an ex-baseball player and having a father who played professional baseball, Kurt Russell accepted the offer. The casting of the team players was more complicated, however, as O'Connor wanted to bring on real hockey players. He figured it would be easier to teach hockey players how to act than to teach actors how to play hockey. I agree with that. It was a wise choice. They hosted tryouts in 6 cities across the world before finalizing the team, which is insane to me. But I think it worked.
So these are, sorry, just to confirm. So these are real hockey players. Are they professional hockey players? Were they college players the way the characters in the movie are?
I think it's a mixture.
Okay.
Yeah, I actually don't think any of them are professional, but that also changes depending on like what country you're in and things like that. Okay. But I don't think any of them are professional because I feel like if they were, I would know who they are.
Probably true.
Yeah. But yeah, so with the entertainment firm Real Sports that specifically provides consulting for sports film productions, as well as Herb Brooks himself providing behind the scenes info on the intricacies of the sport of ice hockey, Miracle successfully accomplishes an accurate depiction of the sport through its cinematography, costume design, dialogue, and story. When Herb Brooks died suddenly in a car accident just 6 months before the film's release, the whole production ended up being dedicated in his honor. So that's a little bit of my research to get us started. I tried to do a little bit of a deep dive into which particular moments in this movie are real versus not real, because, scenes like after that one game where they lose by a lot and they turn out the lights in the arena, it's like, okay, how accurate actually is that really? I was very limited in time, so I wasn't able to dive into as many things as I wanted, but that scene actually is real. So fun fact. But yeah, so all of that being said, I guess I'll start us off in our plot conversation. So for me, like I said before, I love sports movies. Also, I played ice hockey through college. It is my favorite sport on the planet. It is the sport for me. And a lot of hockey movies have tried to be made. Most of them are terrible because the way that they film hockey looks so fake and just not convincing at all. And this movie really pulls off having the hockey actually look like real hockey that people of this level would be playing. And because of that, I think even if the story sucked, it should be lauded for that alone, because ice hockey is a very hard sport to film. It's very fast. There are a lot of intricacies to the game and how you move and how you work, and the dynamics between players and coaches and plays and practices and games and the Olympics. Like, it just does a really good job of tying all of those things together in a way that feels really realistic to the sport of hockey, very respectful to the sport of hockey and the people who also love it. So, yeah, because of that, I love this movie. I think Kurt Russell's performance is very strong, which I think is an added bonus. And ultimately, yeah, I think it's just a very uplifting story that for people who love sports, but specifically ice hockey, it's for them. So so this movie is for me. That being said, I did text Geneva this morning. I hadn't seen this movie in I don't know how long, but it's been years. And so I forgot how much of a sports movie this is. Like, this movie is pretty much just like watching a nonstop hockey game and hockey practices like the whole time, which I did not remember at all. And it's also quite long, and so I anticipate that you were incredibly bored by this movie. And I also noted while watching this that there's a lot of things that are said in this movie that are very hockey specific, that I wonder even if people who are sports people that aren't hockey players would fully get it. And so, Geneva, I'm curious, how much of this movie did you actually understand, if anything? So yeah, tell me your thoughts on this.
Well, you've pretty much read me accurately, I'm sorry to say.
You don't have to be sorry. I'm sorry that I made you watch this. I genuinely forgot how much of a sports movie it is.
I mean, don't apologize. You know, I'm always glad to see a movie that you like, even if I don't share your feelings about it. But yeah, this is very much a movie that I think will appeal to people who enjoy hockey and does not appeal to me as someone who doesn't know much about the sport of hockey. I don't know. I think this is it's a competently made movie. I'm not going to say it's super well made, but I think it's competently made. I think I agree with you. The hockey scenes are filmed really, really well. Like I put that down in my notes. I actually took notes for this movie. That I put it down as stunt work, though if it was professional or real hockey players playing all the roles, I assume that they were actually doing all the hockey work as well. It
is still stunts though, technically, because it's choreographed.
Okay, gotcha.
Yeah.
Well, it was very well done. The handheld camera zooming around in between the action was very impressive. I agree that Kurt Russell is very good in this movie. I enjoyed Noah Emmerich and Patricia Clarkson, even though they have nothing to do. But I always enjoy seeing them. But yeah, I was pretty bored by this movie.
On a scale of 1 to 10, 10 being like, I'm going to blow my brains out, how bored were you? Because I feel like it's probably a 10.
It's not a 10. It's maybe like an 8.
Oh, okay. Well, that's better than I expected.
Yeah, I think the script for this movie kind of lets it down. Because at least from the perspective of someone who, you know, does not know anything about hockey or does not have an automatic sort of emotional in when it comes to hockey, I think this movie, it really, to me, reads like trying to adapt a Wikipedia plot summary about the events that happened rather than actually trying to build a story about unique and interesting characters. Mm-hmm. I think the only person that we really get to know in this story is Herb Brooks. And Kurt Russell's very good, but Herb Brooks is 80% of the time he's an asshole. So I kind of struggled with him at some points. And then all of the characters, all of the players on the team, to me, were very difficult to distinguish. They all look very similar, except for that one guy who has a mustache and then he gets cut right before the game. So he was gone. Mm-hmm. So
hockey players have a look, I will say. And that look has existed for decades.
It kind of cracked me up a little bit where I think it was when, it might have been during the final sort of wrap up narration when Kurt Russell is talking about like, you know, how what they accomplished and everything. He's like, I took a team of all these boys from different backgrounds, and then it just shows them in a line and they all look exactly the same. So yeah, all that is to say is like I wish that the script had been a little bit more open to actually distinguishing the characters and building them and their story and trying to get us invested in them as people alongside Herb Brooks. But it doesn't really do that. It's just Herb Brooks's story, and I don't know. It's definitely trying to build a theme of kind of, you know, establishing the historical context in which this took place and why it was so significant for the United States morale in this particular era. You know, this coming right off of the Depression and chaos of the 70s and the Cold War. But I don't know, that didn't work for me.
I thought there was a lot more of that in this movie. Like, I remember I was like, that's what's going to keep Geneva invested, that aspect of this movie. But I remembered there being a lot more of that. Yeah,
all they really do is just work in a couple of news broadcasts throughout the movie, and then it doesn't really impact the characters themselves in any way. So yeah, I struggled with this movie, if I'm being honest, but I'm really glad that you like it. Mm-hmm. And like I said, I do think that the hockey scenes are genuinely really, really impressive looking, even though I had no clue what was going on at any point. So
yeah. What did you, because you're saying that you wish that there was a little bit more of, or maybe a lot more of character development of like other people that we see here. What did you think of what they did with the goalie and the concept of his mother dying, and so they weren't sure if his head was going to be in the game to be able to really tap in his potential, but he joined the team because his mom wanted him to be there, and then we had little interactions with his dad. Did that do anything for you, or did it feel very tacked on? Or
it felt very tacked on, and again, I found it really difficult to tell the players apart. So even though I know all of that stuff is in the movie, it was really difficult for me to keep the idea that this is all for one particular person. Like I could not. Like he says that thing about his mom and his dad early in the movie at some point, and then like an hour later, like one of the players, their dad randomly shows up at a game, and I was like, oh, maybe it's that guy. Wait, who was that guy that was saying that thing?
Okay.
So yeah, I found it very difficult to kind of keep any sort of character arc or you know, kind of keep it all, the idea that was the story of one particular person in my head. Toward the very end, I was starting to get there with kind of the main. So Jim, I think, right, is the goalie.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I think he's kind of the only one whose name I actually managed to retain. There was the guy who got his knee messed up.
Yeah, that was
that's a different guy, right?
Yeah, that's his last name is O'Callahan.
Okay. Yeah.
Anyway. Okay. Yeah, go ahead. You were going to say something.
Oh, we can save this for a little bit later too. I was just going to mention also the Patricia Clarkson playing Patty. The wife, her part also really frustrated me because I thought it was just very cliched. But we can talk about that part later.
Yeah, I actually thought that she was handled quite well, in the sense that I think that this movie is very clearly, this is Herb Brooks's story. Like, this is not, let's tell a well-rounded character world story about all of these different people and blah, blah, blah. It's very much so, this is Herb's life as a hockey coach coaching this team. And so because of that, I think the fact, like, given that is, in my opinion, the story that this movie is trying to tell, I think that Patty is a good addition. I think that if it was something where we're really trying to dive into the other complexities of his life and blah, 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 then I'd be like, okay, she is incredibly shortchanged. Like, why? What is this? But I think that this is a story where she could have very easily just like been eliminated and not present at all. But I like that she's included. And I think that she doesn't strike me as someone who's just this whining wife at home who's like, ugh, you're a guy doing sports and I'm the wife at home and blah, blah, blah. It seemed very much so to me like they have a history. She understands this pain that he feels because of his history with the Olympics of being so close and then being eliminated. And she knows how much he wants this and she wants to support him. And she's very good at supporting him. But she also, we have moments where she does push back and she's like, actually, you didn't consult me about this. And I'm not okay with that. I don't know. Their relationship feels real to me. Like, it doesn't feel like this is an archetype of a wife that we're putting in here to create conflict. It feels like this is a realistic relationship of a husband who has a chip on his shoulder because of what he's been through, and he has to see this through to the end. And they both recognize that about each other, and they have an argument, and then they sort through it and come together as pun not intended, but they come together as a team to recognize like this is ultimately really important and we're going to do it. So I don't know. I think the only thing that bothered me about her is we have this one moment, but she doesn't even say it in a way that's annoying in my opinion, but she says something where she's like, she says something along the lines of, I might not understand this sport and what you're doing, but don't get mad at me for caring about you or whatever. And that was something where I'm like, okay, classic wife who's like, I don't know sports, blah. And I think about in my family growing up playing hockey, my dad knew hockey because he played when he was younger. My mom didn't really know anything about hockey because she didn't grow up playing it or knowing anyone that played it. But she learned the sport as we kids started playing. Like, she doesn't know all the intricacies of how it works, but she understands hockey more or less. And so I'm like, I feel like the wife of someone like this would have some knowledge of how hockey works. But that's just a very quick line that she says in passing, and then we move on. So I don't know. I feel like there could have been more of her, but I also think that she is just as much on the sidelines as literally every other character in this movie. It's not just uniquely her. It's her and everyone else. And because of that, I'm able to get past it.
Yeah, I think sense. It does. I think we're just going to disagree on this because for me, she does feel very archetypal. She does feel very cliched. The trope of the sort of woman on the sidelines who in the first half of the story is complaining that her great man husband is like, going out and using his talent or using his dream. And she's like, but what about your family back at home? And then in the second half of the movie, she kind of shows up again and is proud of him. Like, that's just such a overused cliche. I've seen it in so many stories. I've seen it in sports movies. I've seen it in movies about scientists, about politicians and social activists and things like that. Like, it's just a trope. And I think Patty is very well performed because Patricia Clarkson is a very good actor. But writing wise, I didn't see anything about Patty as a character that elevated it out of that trope. So honestly, I kind of would have preferred it if the family had just been eliminated and it focused more on the team, which I know sounds very contradictory to what I say. It's like I needed more or I needed it eliminated altogether because as it is, it's just kind of there to be a little bit, to kind of there because it's expected and not there because it has something to contribute to the overall story, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I mean, I do disagree with you on the point that I don't think that she starts out as this wife who's like, don't do this to the family. And then all of a sudden she switches and she's on the other side. I don't see that. I see from the very beginning, I think she's very supportive. She's like, how did the meeting go? Someone's calling you on the phone, like take the phone call. She seems to understand from the very beginning that this is very significant and she's excited for him about this opportunity. So I think that it's established from the beginning that she is on his side. It's just that in real life, you know, you're going to have moments where you're going to be frustrated with your spouse over certain decisions that they're making, because this is a huge change. And so I feel like, I don't know, if it had been something where it was, I don't mind the conflict. I think is it the most like revolutionary idea? Is it the best written? No, but I don't think, in my opinion, it doesn't feel disrespectful to me. I've watched other movies where I'm like, oh, I hate this wife so much. Like, why is she here? But again, I think because she is joined by pretty much everyone else in the cast in being sidelined, it doesn't bother me that much. And I think that if she had not been in this movie at all, I would have been like, where's, like, so who is this person? Like, he just is a coach? Is there anything else here? Who is he? So I think it was helpful to have a little bit of something else. Is it the best? No, but I think that if it wasn't there at all, it would have felt a lot stranger to me. But again, I mean, we can agree to disagree on that. It's not something that I'm like, I see your point. Like, yeah, I can see how one could make that argument and have that takeaway.
Yeah. I mean, it's such a small part of the movie, you know?
Yeah. 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 So I don't really want to necessarily go through the plot of this movie, because it's kind of the classic plot of underdog. Let's play the game. We lost. Okay, let's train harder. We're getting better. Oh, one step back. Now we win. Like, the plot is very uninteresting, in my opinion. It's the individual things that are happening here and there that are, in my opinion, what keep me going. Because this movie is very long. It could be, they could probably chop down 20 minutes of this, if not more. But also, I think part of the reason it is as long as it is that we have very extended sequences of hockey games, which I found watching this movie, I was like, maybe I should just go watch a hockey game. Like, maybe that's what I actually want. Like, I just want to watch a hockey movie that has little bits of like the team behind, and that works for me.
Have you ever gone and watched the actual game that this is based on? I bet it's probably uploaded on YouTube somewhere.
It probably is. I should watch it. But no, I have not. I've probably seen it on the background in some hockey store somewhere, because whenever you go to a hockey store, they always have some historic hocky game playing on the television.
Oh, interesting. Yeah, makes sense.
To motivate the children that are buying their first pair of skates. So cute. But yeah, so I kind of just want to pick, I feel like I want to pick very specific moments that I want to hear your perspective on, because I feel like that's going to be more of an interesting conversation than me just monologuing.
And I want to, actually, could we, just to start, could you explain to me the whole...
How the sport of hockey works.
How the sport of hockey works. I know there's a puck and there's a couple nets. No, what it is that Herb Russell is doing that is revolutionizing American hockey. Like how he talks in the beginning about how the existing strategy is too reliant on star talent, and he wants to make it, I guess, more like an even team effort, and that's how they're going to beat the Soviets. Can you like expand on that? Do you have any more insight into what it is that he's doing that's so revolutionary at the time?
Yeah, so I know you've seen and you dislike the movie Moneyball, but it is kind of a similar concept in the sense that there is like a board of people that have a traditional way of choosing a team, where they've had this process where they look at videos and they look at, you know, their how many goals they've scored and how many games and blah blah blah. They go based off of these specific reasons that they've traditionally always followed as to how they bring these people onto the team. But Herb doesn't care about that. He's not really like, oh, this is the star player of this team and this is how many goals they've scored. He more so is looking for the undefinable potential, if that makes sense. So he has that monologue in the movie where he's like, you think that I'm making a stupid decision, but I have spent hours watching videos of these people playing, and I know their coaches, and some of them I've coached, and if I haven't coached them, I've called their coaches. So his method is less so based on what is your track record in terms of like the logistics of how many points you've scored and things like that, and it's more so based on like, are you teachable? are you passionate about this game? Like, can you be molded into pursuing this dream? Can you be a part of this family? Like, it's based a lot more on prediction than actual fact, if that makes sense. So obviously he's choosing from a very talented pool of players. Like, we learned from the beginning, they have these tryouts in the beginning, and there's dozens and dozens of people there, and all of these people are incredibly, incredibly skilled. So he's not choosing bad players, but he's just choosing the ones that are a little bit less, like, obviously the best, if that makes sense. And because there's this huge pressure from America to have this political statement of we are beating the Soviets, and also we were annihilated at the last Winter Olympics, we really want to come out on top this time. Like, the world is looking at us more than ever, so we need to build this incredible team. This isn't the time to just go off of our gut, you know? But Herb is like, nah, man, my gut's right. And they're like, okay, we'll see what happens. We'll roll the dice. And he rolls the dice, and it works out. So that's the difference. It's like he's breaking the formal traditional model of the types of players that you bring on the team.
Okay, that makes some sense to me.
Yeah, which is why, you know, when he kind of first brings them onto the team, he's like, take this test, which is really doesn't have anything to do with anything. But he's like, I want to know your character. Like, I'm not learning anything of how you play hockey based off of this test. I'm learning about your character and how you're going, like, what's your role going to be? How are you going to fit into this? So that's more so like his approach, which is why even the players themselves are like, what are you doing? Like, I don't understand. What are your methods? This doesn't make sense. You know, and we learn that too, as he goes on in terms of how he trains his players. Like, he's training his players in a very specific way that other people wouldn't advise. Like, we hear the assistant coach, Craig, he basically tells him, he's like, you're wearing the players down. Like, the team is tired. This is not the way to do this. Like, you have to train people and let them have some time to recover. Like, do legs and then do this and then do this type of training, do more lung building or what, like, there's different ways to do this, but you're just running them into the ground. This isn't how you coach. And he's like, nah, I think it'll work. And it does. And it does. So there are a lot of things that he does differently. But it pays off. So it pays off in terms of winning the gold medal.
Yeah, I was going to say, at some point we should have a conversation about his coaching methods, and I'm kind of interested to hear about your opinion on them. Yeah,
so is that helpful to you at all?
Yeah, comparing it to Moneyball is helpful.
Yeah. It's very different from Moneyball in the sense that in Moneyball he's going based off of like an algorithm that an economist create, or I don't know if he's an economist, but some sort of numbers guy creates. Whereas this is less so like I'm following the logistics and more so I'm following like, other things regarding.
Yeah, it's a little bit more human, I guess.
Yeah, like your passion for the game, your dedication to the game, your willingness to put in the hard work. He even says like it doesn't matter. He's like, none of you have enough talent. This isn't about talent. This is about, how hard are you willing to work? Do you want this? Because I guarantee you, like, the Russians don't think you want it. And, whatever. So, it's just as much of an emotional game as it is a physical game. And he taps into both of those things. He pushes them to their physical limits and also wants to see them push themselves into their, like, passion limits, I guess, for lack of a better word. But yeah, so that being said, I really wanted to talk to you about the so first of all, the drill that he repeatedly has them do, which is like blue line back, red line back, far blue line back, far goal line back. That is called a 60-second drill because you're supposed to do it in 60 seconds. Which is exhausting and hard to do, speaking as someone who's done lots of 60-second drills. But he says you have to do them in 45 seconds. But so that's kind of his go-to drill. All of us hockey players hate 60-second drills. But so, yeah, I wanted to talk to you about that sequence of when they lose that game. Who is it against? It might be against the I think they're in Norway. I think they're playing Norway at that time. But their heads are really not in the game. This is their first game after all of their initial practicing and training to kind of see how they shape up against these other international teams. Their heads are not in it. They're not invested. They don't care. And they lose by a lot. And so Herb is basically like, nah, y'all aren't getting off the ice. What do you think? What? And then he's like, if you guys aren't going to put in the effort during the game, you're going to put in the effort now. And so then we go into this long sequence where he's having the boys, as hockey players say, let's go boys. But he has the boys basically do a million, I guess I'll call them 45-second drills into infinity. And I think in the research that I did, it said something about like it was up to an hour or something like that of this, which is a long time. But yeah, so I was watching this scene in particular, and I really wanted to hear your thoughts on it because I already think I know what you think about it, but I wanna hear your perspective. And let me just say from the get-go, I've had this happen to me. I'm pretty sure my coach stole it from the movie Miracle. I'm pretty sure he straight up stole it from Miracle. But I was in high school and we played a game, and we were not in it for whatever reason. I mean, we weren't talking about hot people in the stands on the other side of the rink, but our heads were just not mentally in the game, and we lost by a lot. And my coach was like, get on the goal line. And he made us do this, not for an hour, but he made us do it for long enough for us to be like, okay, we're dead. Can we please get off the ice now? So yeah, I just wanted to say that I have experienced this in my own way, and I've survived. I'm still here. I am fine. I'm not emotionally traumatized because of that experience. But yeah, I want to hear your thoughts on it.
That is good to know, because this was the scene in which I had the thought, what is the difference between tough coaching and abuse?
I mean, it's a fine line.
It is, yeah. Well, it's good that you say that it was about an hour, because it's very difficult to tell in the movie. In the movie, it seems like they're there for like 4 hours,
yeah,
which I think would definitely be abusive. I'm glad it was not that long.
I think the lights being turned off was more so a signal of like, y'all need to leave. We need to clean the ice so I can go home.
Yes, which if I was a poor, if I was just like a beleaguered worker at this gym, at this hockey rink,
yeah,
and I just wanted to clean the damn ice and go home, and these idiots would not leave, I would be so pissed.
Yeah, I think that's more so what the lights was. It's like, hey, get off, go home.
Yeah, I was not crazy about this scene because like I said, I do find Herb to be an asshole through so much of this movie to his family and to his players. And I know that it's part of his coaching strategy, which is, why I'm actually very curious to hear about your thoughts on his coaching strategy. But I don't know, to me as an outsider, this really seems like trying to break down and kind of psychologically torture your players more than building them up. And I know it does work in the end. So, I guess I'm just coming at it from a, not the athlete perspective, but I don't know, while watching that scene and seeing Craig really struggle with, is this person that I'm working for a complete tyrant? Has he lost his mind? Is he going to hurt these players? Like, if those are the questions in the air, I don't know if your strategy is good. I don't know. I'm curious to hear your thoughts on this. Like you said, this has happened. A lighter version of this has happened to you and you're fine. So I know it's not necessarily... It is not abuse, but it just made me very uncomfortable.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's definitely an argument that could be made that it is abuse. Like, I'm not going to sit here and say with 100% certainty, like, yeah, this is totally fine. You should do this to all of your teams. Like, cool. It's not like this is your go-to strategy on how to coach your players. But I don't see Herb Brooks as an asshole in this whole movie. Honestly, I just see him as someone who, like I said before, he has a chip on his shoulder that he is like desperate to overcome.
Well, okay, sorry, just to interrupt you for 1 second. That actually is the most interesting thing to me about Herb Brooks is that the movie makes it very clear that he is so desperate to get to the Olympics because he himself felt slighted. And there is not one moment where he's in a press conference and a journalist asks if the reason that he doesn't let his players partake in the press conferences is because he wants the spotlight on himself. And I think there's a really interesting kind of subtextual, not saying that this is true, but at least this questioning of what are the purity of his motives? Does he actually care about the game? Does he actually care about his players? Or does he actually just want, his own achievement and his own glory? And it's fine if that's part of it. Like, these things can be complicated. Two things can be true at once. But I think that's actually a really interesting thing about Herb is there is this kind of queasy questionable, like, why is he pushing so hard for this? And what are his motives exactly? Yeah, that's just a thought that I had at certain points in the movie. Sorry, carry on.
Yeah, well, I don't think the movie shies away from that question, in my opinion. I think it's something where, like, they're trying to establish, I think they're very clearly asking the questions of, are his methods okay? Which we see, as you said, which we see in how Craig responds to certain things, which we see in how Doc responds to things. Like, it's very much so establishing that he's walking a fine line, and it pays off in the end, which is incredibly rewarding and makes it worthwhile. But I don't think the movie is arguing, like, again, this should be the go-to strategy of how to coach your players. But yeah, I mean, I think there's just something different between how athletes understand sports and how non-athletes understand sports. Because when you've experienced being an athlete and you're really passionate about a sport, and of course, there are people who, especially when they're younger, they play sports because their parents want them to play them, and that's a totally different story. But people who are passionate about a sport and they're playing because they choose to and because they want to, there's something different going on there, because especially when you're an adult, you have the ability to say no. You have the ability, which, I mean, kind of, maybe, I don't know. But I don't know. There's this theme of you're so passionate about something that you're willing to do anything for it. And there's a type of satisfaction that comes from knowing that you have given something your all. So even if you lose, even though it's heartbreaking, you know that you did everything that you could, which is why it's so hard for Herb when he has to cut that one player loose, because he's like, thank you for giving me your absolute very best. Like, you deserve to be here, and this does not mean that you're a bad player. You are some of the best, and you gave it everything that you had. Thank you. And there's a beautiful aspect to that, of just knowing that you have given your absolute all to something that you love and that you care about. And also you're not the only one doing it. You're doing it with, even though it's said in a very cheesy line in this movie of like family, but like you're doing it with a family. You're doing it with teammates. You're all in this together. You're all equally passionate. You're all giving everything that you've got to get where you want to go. And
I did really like that line that he says to his wife, where he says, what I care about is that in 20 years, these 20 boys are going to know that they didn't leave anything on the table. I thought that was a good line.
Yeah, I mean, because if you're not going to give everything you have, then don't show up. Like that's just the fact of the matter. Like, when you make it to this high of a level, if you're not going to give everything you have, then you shouldn't be here, because there's someone else who would. And so I just think there's something really powerful about that. And I think that Herb's methods, even though they are questionable, and I don't think the movie shies away from that, he really taps into that of like, you guys want to be here. And that's just a really moving thing for me as an athlete to watch this and be like, these are all people who are not giving up, and this coach is not giving up on them. And seeing this dynamic of Craig, like, he is very wary of what Herb is doing, but at the same time, he's like, I'm going to trust that there is something here. And eventually he does see it because it unites the teammates in a way that they weren't united before. But yeah, I don't know. I think that if someone were to sit down and make an argument that sort of coaching scene is abusive, I'd be like, that's a valid argument, like completely valid. But also, I don't know, there's a beauty to it. And again, not to keep repeating myself, but I don't think the movie is shying away from the fact that what he's doing is questionable. Like, we literally have very distinct sound mixing and audio of these men literally like dry heaving. And, it's very clearly like they are being pushed to a limit that is pretty much unhealthy. Have I been pushed to that limit? Yes, I have. But I don't know. It's just, I just think that there's something about competitive athletes that there's just like a known understanding between all of us that if you haven't been a competitive athlete, it just doesn't connect. And I'm not going to try and force someone to understand it because I wouldn't get it either if I hadn't been in it myself and been with other people that were also in it. So, but yeah, but definitely while watching it, I was like, Geneva's probably wanting to like go over there and shake this man and be like, stop, this is not okay. I'm calling all of the people to get you fired because this is not okay what you're doing. But yeah, I don't know. I think ultimately it worked. And I think when you're a coach, ultimately you have to be somewhat mad, as long as there's a method to your madness, but also abuse is not okay. Like I know lots of people that were very competitive athletes growing up that have experienced abuse, and it's been very hard for them. So I'm not arguing that abuse is okay or that it doesn't exist.
Right. Well,
because it does exist.
For you and in this situation, it does not cross that line. That it is he is pushing them really hard. But as an audience member, you're meant to understand that he has a very finely calibrated sense of how hard he can push them without breaking them. And he doesn't get to that point.
Yeah, and I also don't think he's demoralizing them. He's not like, you all suck. You guys, you better run home to mommy. You guys, like, he's not like ripping them apart. He's trying to motivate them to get them on the same page of like, what are you guys doing? You guys need to get your head in the game. Like, why are you here? If you don't want to be here, then go home. It's a lot more of like motivate, like in what he's saying, he feels a lot more motivating or trying to motivate as opposed to I'm intentionally trying to tear you down, which is different.
And he's also trying to unite them and break them out of that mindset of I come from a very specific region of the United States. I play for a very specific college and I'm only here temporarily to play with these other people. And he's trying to get them into that mindset of we're all on the same team playing for the same, playing for the United States of America, not playing for University of Minnesota or playing for Boston University or whatever it is. So again, when Mike What's-His-Face is finally like, I play for the United States of America, I'm like, I feel like Herb could have been a little clearer that that's what he's looking for. I mean, maybe he didn't have a clear idea of what he was looking for, and he's like, I guess that's good enough. You guys can go home. But,
yeah, he's like waiting for something to justify why he's been doing this for so long.
The longer it goes on, the more awkward it is, and he's like, oh gosh, I hope,
how do I get out
one
of
them
this?
says something.
I backed myself into a corner. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. And I mean, I know I also come from it from a perspective of, having some personal history with like male authority being used in not great ways that makes me just very sensitive to questions of like, is someone using their power just for the sake of using their power as opposed to using the power for the betterment of the people under them, if you know what I mean?
Yeah, I think both here, I was going to say something. Oh, one thing that I also love in this movie is there's like this montage of the drills and the training and the practices, and you know, it's going from ice to them being in the like off the ice, and they're all taking these ice baths and things like this, and then it's just like this big montage of training and practices. And I totally relate to the moments when Herb is like drawing the drills on the glass, and then everyone's like, what is he talking about? Because every once in a while you have a coach who has some drill and they draw it out and they're like, okay, let's go run the drill. And all of us are like, none of us know what we're doing. Like, we don't know what this drill is. And then we get to the line to do the drill and everyone's like, who's going to go first? Like, no, you go first. No, you go first. And I was always the one where I'm like, someone else go first. I'm not doing it because I have no idea what the drill is. But I really liked that moment because we have all these things where he's so passionately like this way, and then you're going to come around here, blah, blah. And there's all these arrows and they're just like, yeah, no, I'm lost. Do you know what he's talking about? Nope. Okay, cool. Let's figure it out.
I was like, I'm right there with you, players. I have no idea what he's talking about.
Yeah, sometimes it happens because it's just, but those are the fun drills to figure out because sometimes you do the same drills over and over again. You're like, okay, can we try something new? It's also fun watching this movie and just remembering like, oh, I've done that drill and I've done that thing and I've done that thing. Not that I am anywhere near an Olympic level hockey player, but there's kind of these same drills that just happen across the board.
Yeah. I mean, I assume the building blocks are all the same, even if you're playing at different levels.
Yeah. Yeah.
Do you ever give your coach a whip and a sign saying Ayatollah for Christmas?
No. And I also was like,
that did kind of make me laugh.
Is this a BDSM whip? Like, I don't know. Or is it just
where
like
did they get that whip
is
from?
it a prop whip? I don't know what this is, but okay. I did like that Craig's present was a whistle. I thought that was funny as well.
Plastic whistle.
Yeah. Yeah. So I wanted to ask you, you might have mentioned one already. I can't remember, but are there any moments in this movie that worked for you that you were like, this connected with me, or I liked this, or is it just kind of across the board, like didn't get it? It's okay if it's across the board. I'm just curious.
It's pretty off across the board.
Mm-hmm.
I wasn't really connecting with it. I did feel a little bit for the mustache kid Ralph when he gets cut toward the end, but I was also like, I really wish I knew anything about Ralph because I think I would be much more sad at this scene.
Okay.
Apart from the fact that he has a mustache.
Okay. Yeah. Interesting.
I did. This is not what you asked, but I did. I'm just looking through my notes. Mm-hmm. I really enjoyed the fact that they make the Soviet coach look like Dracula.
Oh my God. Yeah. He's
so
very
he has these giant bushy eyebrows that they comb upward. So it looks like he's Dracula.
Yeah. He's very intense.
Yeah.
I do like that moment at the end when they kind of have that little exchange where Herb gives him a very tiny thumbs up, and then he just like nods in return. Like, all right, cool. All is well.
Yeah.
Another beautiful thing, my dad used to always say this, like, one of the beautiful things about hockey is it's the only sport where at the end of the game, regardless of what's happened, you go down the line and you say good game. You touch everyone's hand and you say good game. And it's like, yeah, people think that hockey is this like incredibly violent sport, which like in certain ways it can be. But I don't know, there's like this beautiful aspect to it where it's just like at the end of the day we might hate each other, but also we're forced to respect each other even if we don't want to.
That's good.
Have respect.
Yeah.
Which I think is great. But
can you explain to me the part where Herb brings in this other player, Timothy, temporarily, and then the players get really mad about it? I mean, I understand why they get mad about it because it's like you're cutting people as it is, and now there's another person who's potentially come on who hasn't run the gauntlet with us for 6 months. But what is it that he sort of comes to this conclusion where he's like, okay, I'm going to use Timothy until we get to Lake Placid, and then he's going to go. What was I don't fully understand his reasoning there.
Yeah, so I could probably do research to know what it is with 100% certainty, but I see it as being one of two options. One is either that he is legitimately bringing him on as like an actual candidate for the team, because he does talk about he's a great player. He's very talented. Like, he could benefit us on this team. He when those players pull him aside, he literally explains to them, he's like, we want to beat the Russians and he could legitimately help us get there. Do you really not want me to have him try out on the team? And then they're like, yeah, like, yes, that, like, yes, no, we don't want that. I don't know if it's yes or no, but because we're a family. Okay, great. And he's like, okay. So I do think that it's one of two things. It could be that he legitimately is so blinded by wanting to win the game that he's like, this player could help us get there, so he's going to come in and I'm going to give him a shot. Or it could be something where he's like, let's just try this out and see how the team responds and see if it unites them. Because I do see that when that player comes out onto the ice, like, Herb and Craig are very friendly to him, but almost kind of in like a wink wink sort of way to each other.
So he's kind of playing mind games with the team, the way they kind of say to each other.
Yeah, like the fact that they get to this point where they tell him, we're a family. We've been together for months now. You can't bring someone else on. Like, it could have been something where he's trying to help them really realize that and verbalize that and further solidify them as like a team/family. But I don't know. I think it's one of those two, because when they do say we're a family, like, his response is like, family, huh? Really? Like, he seems kind of shocked by that's the word that they use. Mm-hmm. By that being the word that they use. But yeah, I don't know. So my answer is I don't actually have 100% certainty, but I do think it's one of those two things. But yeah, either way, it's in his mind getting him closer to winning the gold medal. So
because Timothy doesn't play in the Olympics, right?
No,
like, he's gone by that point. Okay.
Yeah, he's gone after they have that conversation.
Okay.
Yeah, and then the only one left to get rid of is poor old Ralph. Poor guy.
Ralph.
Yeah, he takes it like a champ. He takes it.
He
like
really
a
does.
champ.
Yeah, I actually like whoever played Ralph. I really like that guy.
Yeah. Well, I wonder if you like him because he's the only one you were able to repeatedly recognize who he was because of the mustache.
His mustache was very helpful.
I wonder how much that tainted your experience of the movie. Like, if you would have enjoyed it more if you were able to consistently like follow the threads of the individual players.
I mean, it probably would have helped, but I really don't think that this movie takes a lot of trouble to build up individual characters. Like, there's that feud between two of them that's resolved pretty early on. But other than that, like, we have a few scenes of them just kind of hanging out and goofing around, but they don't really have you don't see like substantially different personality traits between the two of them. None of them really have any, little quirks or, superstitions or, picture of their girlfriend that they talk about, or like, there's nothing really that is given to most of them to make them stand out or to make them differentiated from each other. So, yeah, I think even if I wasn't so face blind with them, it still would have been hard for me to connect with them without the writing having been a little bit different.
I think even though they are minor, I think there are little traits that differentiate them that you just weren't able to pick up on because you couldn't identify the differences between them. Because again, like, I do think that everyone in this story is sidelined except for Herb. So like, I'm not arguing that they're fully developed characters because they're not. But I think there are certain things that are there that are unique to each person that you probably, it sounds like you didn't pick up on because you weren't able to like follow them as individuals really. They were kind of just one conglomerate of people on a team.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I did enjoy the end credits sequence when they credit every single actor who plays, with the name of the team player that they played. And
you
also
were like, they should have done this in the beginning.
Well, yes. And like, I feel so sorry for all those ones who did not get a single line. But at least they get credited by name in the end, which is great. But it really cracked me up how they show the current occupation of each of the team players, and every single one of them.
So many of them are in real estate.
Real estate, finance, motivational speaking, or coaching. It was just one of the four. 20 people, four professions. It really cracked me up.
Coaching is pretty normal. I did see that one of them went on to be...
one of them was like a dental surgeon or something. Good for him.
One of them went on to be, I don't remember which team it was. It was some Minnesota team, but they went on to be a coach of a women's hockey team. And I was like, hell yeah. That's great.
Oh, I didn't even see that. Oh, that's awesome.
Represent women's hockey. It's a legitimate sport. But anyway, yeah. So my last note that I wrote down, there's this one line in this movie that I really, really love. I'm just like, if my coach said that to us, to our team, I'd be like, hell yeah. But in the last, I guess it's not the last game because they technically played, I think, Sweden after they played Canada. Which, how disappointing would that be if they beat, or not Canada, oh my gosh, if they beat Russia and then lost to the next team.
Our big, dangerous rival, Canada.
Don't even get me started about Canada and the oh man.
I'm sure Canada could wipe the floor with us in ice hockey. But it's, by the way, it's
don't
not
say that,
Sweden.
Geneva. No, that's not true. We're actually a huge competitor for Canada in the Olympics. We are even, and sometimes we are better. I love Canadians, but...
All right, I'm sorry. Fair enough. No, I just wanted to correct because I did write this down while watching the movie, is that the first game that they play in the Olympics is against Sweden, but the final one that allows them to win the gold medal is actually against Finland.
Finland
represent.
Yeah. But yeah, anyway, so the line that I really like is in that last the game where they're fighting the Soviets, and I think it's like it's after the first period or something, and I think the game is tied, or maybe USA is up by 1, I'm not sure. But the Soviets, they decide to bench their goalie and put their backup goalie in the net. And Herb says to his team, he goes, they just put the best goaltender in the world on the bench. And I'm like, that is huge. Like, that shows how much rage is coming from their team in terms of like, we don't know. We have not been in this situation for a very long time. Our goalie has been so faithful to us and done such a great job. But now we're going to put him on the bench and put someone else on the ice. Like, that's just, man, they're getting weak. They're taking their goalie off the ice. I also love the moment towards the end of that game too, when, there's just so much hockey strategy that is shown in this movie. But whenever you're playing a hockey game and it's a very important game and it's down to the wire and you're down by 1 point, it is very common to pull your goalie off the ice in the last 2 minutes. Because if you take your goalie off the ice, then you can put on an extra player. And so you have a 1-person advantage. So it's 6 players on your team versus 5 players on the other team instead of 5 versus 5.
But
so
your net is completely undefended.
Yes. So that's when hockey is like at its best, when it's a super important game and someone pulls their goalie to tie the score and it's like 6-on-5 and the net's empty. Like, it's amazing. But I really loved this moment where Herb, because he's a fantastic coach, he anticipates that they're going to do that. And he says this thing where he's like, there's no more changes. The line that is on the ice, they will stay on the ice, because once they pull their goalie, I want fresh legs. Like, that is when they change. Everyone's staying there until they pull the goalie, and then, and I was like, that's such a great coaching moment and such a great coaching decision of like, I'm anticipating that this is going to happen because it's something that happens in hockey. And my response is they're staying on the ice so that we can have fresh legs, which is, I love it. But I love hockey so much.
I love seeing you so passionate about this.
I love it. Have you ever seen me play or no? Probably not.
No, I don't think so.
Okay. Yeah. Well, probably not that impressive now. I'm very out of shape and haven't played in years.
I can guarantee it would be, to my untrained eyes and untrained body, it would be vastly more than I could achieve or dream.
Oh, man. But anyway, also, I wanted to say that there's this memory that I have from, I was thinking about this actually when what's his name? O'Callahan, who has the knee injury, when he plays the game, even though it's like, should he be playing? Like,
It's another
hockey.
questionable coaching decision.
This is hockey. This stuff happens all the time. It really does. It's what we do. But I remember there was one game. So when I was on a team in high school, we won the state championship, which is like huge. And I was so violently ill. Like I had the stomach flu. It was so bad. But I was like, I am not missing this championship game. And I didn't play very much because I was so sick, but I did play. And I remember there was this moment in that game where we were winning, I think 3-1. And I was sorry, I'm all over the place, but I was thinking about this because in this game against the Soviets, I was kind of thinking like, guys, I understand this is huge that the game is this close, but you guys should not be celebrating this much every time you score a goal. Like the game is not over. Like, yes, you guys can celebrate. It's normal to celebrate a goal, but y'all are acting like you just won the gold medal.
There was a point, I think it may have been halfway through the game, where everyone was celebrating so much. They won. I thought I wrote in my notes, the U.S. wins. And then I realized the game was not
The game wasn't over. Yeah. So I was like, y'all need to like, congratulations for scoring a goal. You should celebrate, but also the game is not over. And it made me think of this state championship game. It was, I think there were like 3 minutes left in the game or something. And we were winning 3-1. And we were like so pumped. We were like, oh my gosh, we did it. We're going to win the state championship. So all of us were like getting really jumpy on the bench. We were like, oh my gosh, like we're going to win the state championship. This is amazing. And then our heads were so not in the game anymore that the other team scored. So it was 3-2. And we had like 2 minutes left at that point, and my coach was like, everybody shut up. not in a mean way, but he was like, guys, this game is not over. Like, no. Like, we need to. And all of us were like, oh shit. Like, dang, now it's 3-2. We've got 2 minutes left. Like, they're going to pull their goalie. What if they tie the game? Like, oh my gosh. But I was thinking about that while watching this scene. I'm like, y'all need to chill because anything could happen. Like, this game is not over.
Wait, you have to finish the story. Did you win the championship?
Oh yeah, we won the state championship.
Yay.
We won 3-2. I contributed barely anything to that game because I was very sick with the stomach flu, but I was there. My coach was actually very kind. I think it was like when there were like maybe 15 seconds left in the game or something, and we were like, I think we'll be okay. Or maybe we scored again and it was 4-2. I don't really remember, but we won the game. But I do remember that when there were just a few seconds left in the game, maybe 30 seconds or something less than that, I don't know, my coach, he was like, Tatum, I want you to get on the ice. Like, you should go out there for your last like few seconds or whatever, because you haven't played very much. Which I was like, I was basically begging him not to play me. I was like, seriously, I'm just happy to be here. Like, I will contribute nothing. I'm very sick. But the fact that he like recognized that and was like, Tatum, like, you've contributed to this team. You need to like get out there on the ice. Like, and I was like, okay, thanks, coach.
That's amazing.
And I finished the state championship game on the ice. This is what I'm saying, Geneva. Like, there's so much that happens in the sport that like, it's really beautiful. That people just don't see because they're not on the bench or they're not a part of the team. Like, they don't, especially in movies like this, like, you know, they pick and choose specific moments, obviously, because that's what movies do. But it's like there's so many other things that happen behind the scenes that are really powerful and really beautiful, which is why we love it. If hockey was straight up abuse, I wouldn't do it. Like, you know, there's something there, which is why so many people play it. It's not just stupidity. Otherwise, no one would do it.
No, of course. Yeah.
Yeah. But anyway, I'm trying to think if there's anything else specifically about this movie. Because again, it's very much so just kind of like hockey game. We lose. Hockey game. We win. We're trading. Now we're better. Like, conflict, maybe a little bit. But yeah.
Having, as you know, just completed Twin Peaks, the original series, I was very excited to see Major Briggs as one of the members of the advisory committee at the beginning of the movie. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. The first time I saw this movie, I knew him from The Day After Tomorrow. Have you seen the movie The Day After Tomorrow?
Oh my goodness. Have I seen the movie The Day After Tomorrow? That is one of my mom's favorite movies.
Ooh, that's a fun fact about your mom.
Yeah. She has probably seen it like 15 times. It's like a go-to put on a movie while you're folding laundry type of thing. Yeah. So, yeah. Yeah.
Oh my gosh,
Wait,
now I'm looking at
who is Major Briggs in that movie though? I don't remember him.
He's the scientist. He's like in the Arctic, and he's the one who first discovers, and he stays there to like send the data.
Oh my gosh, I remember that scene. I did not realize
he freezes to death.
Yes. Oh gosh.
Yeah. He sacrifices himself for the good of man.
Yeah, I have so many like, memories as a kid of that scene where the helicopter crash lands and they open the door and then the men instantly freeze to death. Like that really creeped me out.
Yeah, I love that movie when I was younger. I watched it like every day. I think that's the first movie I ever saw Jake Gyllenhaal in.
Yeah, definitely the first movie I ever saw Jake Gyllenhaal in.
But anyway, I think it's a good time to wrap this up. I mean, honestly, I don't really have much positive things to say about this movie other than like I love hockey, and I think that this movie captures the game of hockey really, really well. Like I said in the beginning, in terms of like the cinematography and the drills and the culture of a team and like the costume design and even like the hairstyling. Hockey players have such a look, and it has existed for decades, which is why they all look the same. Like it's such a look. It's such a look 70s. That my brother, who has really curly hair, who also played hockey like me, he relaxed his hair to make it like straighter and wavy to get that cut.
Yeah, I was going to say that those late 70s, early 80s kind of long, shaggy cuts that they have, they look pretty good. Like from a, they look pretty accurate, but also it made it even harder for me to tell them all apart because they all had the same haircut.
Yeah. Anyway, okay, cool. So is there anything else that you feel like you want to discuss here? I'm assuming
I don't think so. I've been going through my notes. I don't think there's anything else that I wanted to point out or talk about. Yeah.
Well, thanks for watching this movie. I will take a break from sports films for a while. Although I will say that $1 Million Baby is a lot less of a sports movie than this movie. Would you agree? Please tell me you agree.
Yeah. I mean, if we're talking about percentage-wise of screen time, yeah. I mean, it's still mostly a sports movie, but
Gotcha.
on a sliding scale. Yes.
Okay. Gotcha. All right, cool. Let's go ahead and close out. So, as far as awards, so this movie, not surprisingly, didn't really get any, big notable awards on like the film side of things, but it did win Best Sports Movie at the ESPY Awards in 2004, which is basically like the sports awards every year. Which used to be, I think, hosted by ESPN, and now it's hosted by, I think, ABC or something like that. But I think that's cool. And then it also was named to the AFI Top 10 Sports Films list in 2008. So those are some pretty high honors for a sports movie.
Very nice.
So good job, Miracle.
Now I'm looking up what the other AFI Top 10 sports films are and how many I've seen.
Don't tell me because I want to guess. But yeah, so this movie has a 68 score on Metacritic, and it is 81% fresh on Rotten Tomatoes, which I'm very pleased with both of those numbers. That feels pretty legit, pretty justified. So I pulled 2 reviews. They're both pretty short because, again, I was cramming in research before starting to record. But so the first review that I pulled is from Sherry Linden at The Hollywood Reporter. And she says, what will make the film compelling, even for audience who have never heard of The Miracle on Ice, is Kurt Russell's taut, nuanced portrait of Herb Brooks. And I do think that if Kurt Russell's performance, this is another one of those movies where, like, if the main actor's performance had not been good, the movie would not have worked as well. So at least in my opinion. But yeah, so I like that movie kind of called out Kurt Russell's performance and how that is what holds the movie together, even for people that don't know much about this story. The second review I pulled is written by Mark Mohan, and that it comes from the Portland Oregonian, and he says, ordinary folks working together to triumph over incredible odds, depicted in a Disney film that doesn't overdose on sentiment? That's the real miracle. Which I would agree with. I think that this movie could have been a lot more sappy than it is. I think the sappiest moment of this movie, which I've mentioned a few times that I don't like, is that moment when they're like, because we're family. I'm like, oh, all right. I don't think it needed to be explicitly stated, but whatever.
Tatum doesn't believe in family.
Yeah, family. What is
kidding.
it? I just think the way that it's said and
No, I
presented
know
is
what you
just
mean.
like over the top cheese and unnecessary. But I think aside from that, this movie could have been way more melodramatic than it is. It feels like watching a hockey game, and I love that. But yeah, so that is Miracle. So yeah. So I guess for me to explain a little bit about like what's gonna stick with me or what has stuck with me with this movie, I've already said it a million times. I think I just said it 5 seconds ago. I just love the sport of hockey, and I think that this movie just does a really powerful job of showing the beauties of the sport, the complexity of the sport. I think it advances the purpose behind it in the sense that like hockey can be something as, small as, oh, we're just one team playing another team, or it could be something as big as we're representing a huge like political moment to the whole world and everyone is watching us and it means something really big to people who otherwise wouldn't care about this sport. So I think I like how it shows the magnitude of impact that this sport can have on people, and what it can represent. So yeah, I don't know. It's just, I think it's one of the best hockey movies ever made. I think there's 2 other ones that are very strong hockey movies, but they're each very unique films. One of them is Mighty Ducks, which is a kids movie about kids playing hockey. The other one is a movie that I have been wrestling with for a long time to talk about on this podcast, but I don't think we will, just because A, it has to do with sports, and B, I think the humor would not connect with you. But it's an outrageous comedy. Absolutely outrageous comedy where Paul Newman actually plays one of the hockey players.
Wait, what movie is this?
It's called Slapshot. It came out in, I think, the 70s, maybe 80s. It is a phenomenal comedy. I just don't think you would like it. I am
intrigued. I mean, feel free to put it on the roster. I can't promise, but
I feel like you would really hate it.
You would,
I feel like the humor does not work for you, but we could try it. I literally told my dad we were recording this episode today, and he was like, "Why aren't you doing Slapshot?" And I'm like, "I really wanted to do Slapshot, but I think she'll hate it."
I'm seeing that. Speaking of Twin Peaks, Sheriff Harry Truman is in it too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So anyway, Mighty Ducks is a kids movie. Slapshot is an absolutely outrageous comedy, and then this one is more of a heartfelt drama. So, but yeah. Anyway, so. Is anything going to stick with you from this movie? Or if not, that's fine.
Yeah,
dig deep, Geneva. Dig deep.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, this movie is really not for me. It doesn't have a whole lot for me to dig into. I do think it's a bit cliched. It was a little bit cheesy at times for me. Even though, again, the hockey scenes are very well filmed and Kurt Russell's very good. But I think what's going to stick with me is just this conversation, because I always do genuinely really, really love hearing your perspective, which is very different from my own, on what it's like to be an athlete and how you read these movies and how they connect with you in ways that they can't connect with me. So, yeah, this conversation will be the thing that sticks with me, which is always a pleasure.
That. That's why this podcast is so wonderful.
I know.
We're making memories, Geneva.
We are.
We're not making listeners, but we're making memories.
Which one is the real, which one is more important? Come on.
Yeah. Which, listeners, if you want to be a part of those memories, email us at gmail.com.
Yeah. Feel free to participate. This can be your conversation too.
We invite your friendship. And who knows, maybe if you guys give us movie recommendations, we can discuss those. But anyway, Geneva, what are we talking about next week?
Yes, next week we are shifting gears very much. We are going to be talking about the 1979 sort of semi-autobiographical, deeply existential, musical, all that jazz. I'm very excited to talk about this movie.
I rented this movie from the library 2 weeks ago. It has yet to come in. So,
oh boy.
Hopefully
well, if we need to switch up the recording order, just let me know.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, this movie is kind of notoriously difficult to find. I think there are weird things with the streaming rights where I don't think you can rent it on Amazon, which is very annoying. So usually DVD is the way to go from what I understand.
I feel like it's a really famous movie. That's strange to me.
I know.
Anyway, all right. Yeah. So next week, come back for all that jazz, and we'll talk to you all then.
Yeah.
All right. Bye.
Thanks. Bye.
Thanks for listening. If you want to get in touch with us, you can email us at yourpickpod@gmail.com. Our theme song was composed by Joel Rushton, and our podcast graphic was designed by Kara Shin. If you like this show and want to hear more, please rate and subscribe on your favorite podcast platform. We're excited to have you on this journey with us. Until next time.